playing Bant Control.
And the Bant Control here, Sylvan Caradid and Corsair Crewfix, the only creatures. Jace, Architect of Thought, Elspeth, and Kiora, pretty standard Planeswalker suite. Advent of the Worm as well, some Sphinx's Revelation, so a little bit more of a proactive control deck, though still at its core a control deck. I think probably behind quite a bit in this kind of matchup.
Someone recommended that we talk about Ric Flair until the next round starts. I don't know if that's a good idea. We could do that for a very long time.
Oh, he is a source of, he is a huge source of inspiration for yours truly.
Joe Lossett's going to start things off here with the Temple of Enlightenment. Joshua Kendall with a Temple of Plenty, and we are underway here in round number 4. Again, Bant Control versus Esper Control. Bant will play Breeding Pool. Untapped down to 18, and it looks like maybe a little bit of acceleration. Yes, sir, it is a Sylvan Caradid. Lossett will draw a card here. Again, number 2 in our leaderboard right now, so he does play a Temple of Silence, but currently leading the race for the Players' Championship to qualify via Open Series points. We'll see if he can chain together a nice weekend here. He's off to a pretty good start at 2-1, but not great.
Took a loss early. A long tournament, the way the rounds are structured and the number of players we have, I think Joe can probably afford a draw and still be in contention for the elimination rounds, but his back is against the wall now.
A Corsair of Crewfix does come in. It reveals an Elspeth Sun's champion, but no land on top of the deck. So Kendall not able to find lands here. Lossett will play an island. Just going to pass the turn back. Supreme Verdict looks very, very good in this situation. That's what Kendall reveals from his Corsair, but that's not a land.
It's a problem with the matchup, I think, from Joshua's side is he's playing to the board a little bit more. His mana is tied up in creatures. He doesn't have the same counter suite. He doesn't have Thoughtseize. His deck's probably a little bit better against creature decks because he can get to the board early and often and block, but against a pure control deck like Joe's, he is in some trouble.
Joe's going to cycle an Azorius Charm in a turn. Maybe he's looking for the 4th land for the Supreme Verdict because I'm sure he already has the mass removal spell. What he needs is the 4th land. There is a Plains. This is 4 mana, and that's going to take care of those 2 creatures. With Kendall drawing a Supreme Verdict next turn, and Joe knows that, there will be no 3rd land here for Josh.
Yeah, this is all sorts of trouble. I mean, Joshua's hand is a bunch of expensive stuff. Multiple Revelations, creature removal, and Elspeth. I mean, this is getting ugly.
Lossett's going to draw a card here. He picked up an Elspeth for the turn. Again, Joe splash for black this weekend. He has Thoughtseize in the main deck. Typically, you'll find Temple of Silence in these decks as additional scry lands, but actually can't use the black mana. And Joe's always been a pretty big fan, actually, of Nightveil Spectre in the board, but none of those this weekend. So it looks like we're going to clear something up, make sure everything is okay here. Not sure if Kendall needs to discard or not. What?
It looks like he has 8 in hand.
Yeah, it looks like the game has been paused here briefly. So we'll make sure that everything is okay here. See both players communicating back and forth, and Joe said, I wanted to cast a Rev for 1 before you discarded. So, of course, discarding is the end of the turn. Once someone discards their card for the turn, you can't undo anything.
Yeah, when I announced my intention to move to my discard step, then you had to play with another instance, but I can't discard and then have you play stuff.
Yeah.
The turn's over at that point.
So Joe just wanted to unwind there as he did have something he wanted to do, which was cycle a Sphinx's Revelation. He got to. Kendall did discard his Supreme Verdict due to hand size. So Lossett will take his turn at a huge advantage right now, not only in mana, both players have the same amount of cards, but Joe will be able to progress this game forward. Well, he's going to be discarding now, so this will get interesting here. Looks like Kendall did draw a land. It's a Temple of Mystery, which can help him find actually another land. He's going to put the top card to the bottom. So that's going to play another Rev for 1. So all Joe cares about right now is just hitting land drops.
And he is really struggling right now with that. Looks like he finally found his 5th.
Yeah, Temple of Enlightenment. Top card going to stay on top. Looks like it may have been a Caves of Kolios, and he's playing 2 of those. Here's a Corsair. Will this resolve? Lossett's staring at a dissolve right now. Does he want to use the counterspell on the 2/4?
Well, I think he wants to save the dissolve for an opportunity to scry when he doesn't know the top card of his deck is a land.
Sure.
The dissolve is really valuable for him to try to hit his land drops. He knows that there's a Caves on top, so there's no real rush to do anything to the Corsair.
I'm going to cycle Azorius Charm here, and I do want to correct myself very quickly because Joe does have another black card in his hand. That means he has another black card in his deck besides Thoughtseize. There's actually 2 copies of Devour Flesh in his main deck. Did not catch those on first glance on the deck list, but he does have 2 of those to go along with 3 Thoughtseizes.
I still think it's worth doing the Devour Flesh here. Joe appears to be thinking this one over, but it seems like a really good spot. Allows Joe to untap with multiple counterspells up or deploy Elspeth if he's feeling so inclined.
Devour Flesh does take care of the Courser. And Kendall wondering where the black mana came from. Joe shows him the Temple of Silences. There it is. And now Joe is ready to draw as long as Joshua does let him. And so he will draw a card. And the Caves he knows is on top of the deck, so he can certainly just sit here and deploy Elspeth if he'd like to. Then again, that does turn on a card like Detention Sphere at this point.
But it's one of those things where are you going to get a better spot? Let's say, you play your Elspeth here. Worst case scenario, Josh has a Detention Sphere. Then you untap, you still have your 3 tokens to play and multiple dissolves.
Yeah, it looks like he agrees with you. He will deploy Elspeth. And of course, if your opponent doesn't have Detention Sphere, you're good to go.
It's hard for this play to go wrong by much.
Yeah. So Elspeth does take up to 5 3-soldier tokens incoming, and there those are. You see Kendall does have the Detention Sphere. He's going to cast that to take care of Elspeth, and that's fine, as you did mention, because he does have 3 soldier tokens in play and can defend himself with the counter magic.
It's one of those spots where if the Elspeth wins the game on its own, that's cool. And if not, it's not the end of the world. You get to drain some resources out of Joshua's deck along the way.
Lossett draws a card for the turn. Kendall wants to take a look at the graveyard. He's going to see a couple copies of Revelation and Azorius Charms down there. Along with that, Devour Flesh that Lossett is splashing for. Lossett will attack for 3. Kendall's going to go down to 19. And Joe's going to play a Hollow Fountain taps. See if there's anything else for him to do this turn. You see the Azorius Charm in his hand. He's just going to kick the turn back. Again, does have 2 dissolves in hand. Jace Architect of Thought was the draw for Kendall. Here's a Courser.
Now this is a spot where it's more attractive, I think, to dissolve. You don't really know what's going on with the top card of your deck, and finding some big haymaker here while Josh is stunted is pretty awesome.
Cycle the Azorius Charm first, and then decide if he wants to counter this or not. And it looks like he does want to counter it. So there is Dissolve. Lossett's going to take a look at the top card. That one's going to go to the bottom very quickly.
And that's the outside of using the Dissolve there. It just gives Joe, looks at something big that he can keep on top or burn away something that he doesn't need, like Supreme Verdict.
A Temple of Enlightenment allow Joe to take a look at the top card. It's a Temple of Deceit that's going to the bottom now. Here's an attack for 3. Kendall's going to go down to 16. See if Lossett has anything else to cast this turn. You see him reorganizing the mana. He does have 7 of it untapped. This feels like maybe a Jace as he does reach for 4. And it is. So there is the Architect of Thought. And that elevator's going down. So Lossett's going to take a look at a Caves, an Island, and a Mutavault. Seems as though Mutavault will be the best of the bunch. And it is. So that's going to go to the hand. Those other 2 lands are going to go to the bottom.
Joe's doing a great job of advancing his board while still leaving stuff left over.
Yeah.
All these exchanges are, if Joshua can answer it, not the end of the world. And if he can't, they run away with the game.
A 4th land there for Kendall. He's going to tap 4 mana. Here's a Jace. Does Lossett care is the question. Again, he's got a Dissolve in his hand. He also has a Detention Sphere, too, so he could actually let that Jace hang around. And he says, all right, that's fine. You can have that. And that's going to tick down. So an Advent of the Worm, a Hallowed Fountain, and a Kiora. The Crashing Wave are the cards turned over, and Lossett will have to split these up.
And this is one of those spots where Joe doesn't dissolve because if Joshua minuses, the tokens can take care of Jace. And if Joshua pluses, he gets to use a Detention Sphere. So no real need to do anything.
Lossett going to give this a lot of thought on how he does want to chop these bad boys up. Again, consulting the hand, knows that he has a D-Sphere, knows that he has a Dissolve over there. Has an advantage with a Jace and those 3 soldier tokens. We know about the Mutavault in hand as well. So he can keep pressuring his opponent. Can also finish off the Jace next turn with the soldier tokens, but he's got some things to consider. How much does he care about Advent of the Worm? How much does he care about Kiora?
This feels like a spot where Joshua takes the 2-card pile no matter what the 2 cards are.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to be Kiora that goes to the bottom. A land and the Advent of the Worm are going to go to the grip. It's a Hollow Fountain, and Joe's going to write that down, make sure that he does know. And you see the Elspeth over there. We know about the Sylvan Caryatid. There are also 2 copies of Sphinx's Revelation. And now Kendall will discard a Celestial Flare before passing the turn back over to Lossett. Lossett will draw a card. It's a mystery. And it's another copy of Sphinx's Revelation. Joe's going to play a Mutavault. Going to serve in here. 2 at Jace, 1 at you. So Kendall will go down to 15. We'll see how Lossett wants to manage his Jace. That'll go up. Past the turn back. So Kendall draws a copied attention sphere for the turn.
And these dissolves are so powerful for Joe now that Josh was in basically one spell a turn territory.
At this point, there's a Sylvan Caryatid. We'll see if Joe cares about that at all. Again, does have the ability to dissolve something like this, but he could probably pick a better spot with the counter spell. Again, especially when he has a Revelation in his hand. He's already cashed in 2 of those. Looks like he's going to cash in a 3rd. And you see that he's leaving 1 mana available. The reason for that is he's trying to play around Syncopate.
Though, if I'm Joe here, I'm not really respecting the possibility of Syncopate because Joshua played his Hallowed Fountain tapped in a matchup where his life total doesn't matter. If he had Syncopate in hand, he most likely plays it untapped.
Fair.
So I think I would have gone for 1 more there.
Either way, 5 cards coming here for Lossett and 5 life gained. So now Lossett's going to untap all those lands.
Now, it's possible it's correct to err on the side of super caution because Joe's going to be discarding to hand size most likely anyway, but I'm not buying it that there's a Syncopate in that hand.
Joe going to lead off here with the Thoughtseize. He wants to know exactly what's going on. He's going to go to 23 to do so, and we're going to see Kendall's hand. There's an Elspeth. There's an Advent, the one that we knew about. 2 copies of Revelation, a Banishing Light, and a Detention Sphere. So a powerful hand for Kendall, yes, but does not have the mana to leverage it.
And not really a great way to slog through these dissolves either. It's hard for him to chain together multiple spells in 1 turn. He's got a little hand signal from Tom Ross walking by. Looks like a quick 2-0 for Mr. Ross.
Oh, Tom Ross is walking by with 38 minutes left on the clock? I wonder what happened.
Well, there's also extra time in the feature match area.
You know, there sure is. You're right. There's also not a lot of people walking around right now. The boss looks like he has moved on to 4-0.
He gave me one of those wasn't even close kind of smirks as he's walking by.
Yeah. Another beatdown for the mountains.
It is great having him back. It is so good.
So Joe going to decide what he wants to take with the Thoughtseize here. Decisions here for Lossett. You know, this Thoughtseize is crucial just, of course, because it does lay out how the rest of the game is going to go. And that's important to note.
Feels like you had to take one of the instants here because of the dissolve in hand. The dissolves. It's hard for Joshua to chain together things. It requires an instant to get anything going, really. And yeah, Advent makes the most sense.
Yeah, that's exactly what he does take. He does take one of those instants, an Advent of the Worm. So Lossett does take care of that. Hasn't used his Jace yet. Gonna fire up maybe the Mutavault here. That's 2 mana, so he's gonna take 1. This feels like maybe a Devour Flesh. Yep, gonna get the Caryatid out of the way.
It's another rough way about the way that Joshua has constructed his deck is he has just enough creatures to keep Joe's creature removal alive. These Devour Flushes have done some really good work, but the opposite is not true. These Celestial Flares that Joshua has access to are not doing anything.
No. Attacker 5 is gonna put Kendall down to 13. Lossett will play a Goblet Shrine. He is going to tick up his Jace to 4, and you see the 4 mana available. Still has a Dissolve at the ready. So Kendall will draw a card. It was a Breeding Pool. He's going to play that untapped to go down to 11. This looks like an attempt to try to resolve an Elspeth. That's exactly what it'll be. And Lossett's going to very quickly dissolve that one. He says, don't even think about it. So it's time to scry here for Joe. Temple of Enlightenment's going to go right to the bottom.
I think there's an argument, given how much Dissipate and Dissolve get played when they're printed, that Cancel's probably been historically underplayed in these control decks.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I mean, I know Scry 1's a big deal, but it's, you know.
Joe going to turn over 3 cards here from Jace. Detention Sphere and Island and a Hollow Fountain. It'll be Sphere versus, and Lossett's going to gobble that up. So those 2 lands are going to go to the bottom. He's got plenty of those. He will play a Mutavault. Going to fire up the Mutavault that he has. An attack for 5 is going to put Kendall down to 6. Lossett does have 2 copies of Mutavault in his deck.
And a lot of this, the way this game is shaping up, comes down to the fact that Joe just stuck that Elspeth on turn 6.
Yep.
These Soldier Tokens have done a ton of work. And the Elspeth was answered immediately, but the tokens continue to truck along.
And that is why Elspeth is so powerful. Kendall will draw a card here. Courser of Crufix is what he's added to the grip. Again, there is a Sphere. We know about the Banishing Light and the 2 copies of Sphinx's Revelation. So step 1 is to attempt to resolve this Courser of Crufix. Lossett's staring at a last breath, I believe. Not sure how much he cares about that. Joe going to separate his mana a little bit here. So here's 3 of them. It's going to be another dissolve. It will.
Yeah, he knows he's got Joshua B. He's just going to counter basically the last couple plays he makes here.
Now here's the detention. There's a Banish Light on the Jace. And that's perfectly fine because that's lethal on board. So that goes away. There's 2 Mutavaults plus those 3 Soldier Tokens. So Lossett's going to quickly untap. He's going to draw a card. It says, fire these up. I know you're at 6. There are no free spells in this format. Attack you for 7. That's going to do it. So Joe Lossett's going to win game number 1 here over Joshua Kendall. Esper Control up a game over Band Control.
What you said is clearly true in practice in this matchup, though that is no longer the case. Convoke is back.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
We are in 0 mana trick territory.
I did forget that that is the thing that can happen. Devouring Light, for example.
Oh, I mean, this is not going to really be coming up in Constructed, but I was doing an M15 draft the other day where I was tapped out with a Runeclaw Bear in play, and my opponent used Hunt the Weak on a 2/2 while I was tapped out.
Error.
And then
somebody had to gather courage, didn't they?
Oh yeah, and the bear killed this guy, and then he died. That's how that one worked out.
Tough to watch.
And I hope we're going to see some of those moments in Standard. Devouring Light probably the most likely candidate for this. Shows up when someone was tapped out.
Besides, I mean, Stoke the Flames obviously is going to happen, but you know there will be some ones that are not played as much.
Oh, and Devouring Light with Elspeth. Oh.
Never heard of it?
Now you got a stew going.
Yeah, you sure do. We'll take a look at the sideboards here. Joshua Kendall has... Oh, actually, you have that one in front of you, so I'll let you start.
A Blind Obedience, 2 Celestial Flares, an Archangel Thune, a Deicide, 3 Mistcard Hydra, 2 Negate, Pithing Needle, an Aetherling, a Jace Memory Adept, and Nyx Fleece, 2 copies of Nyx Fleece Ram. So, fair amount of stuff to bring in here. The additional Planeswalkers, I think the Needle, the 2 Negates, the 3 Mistcard Hydras, all are significant upgrades over the creature removal stuff he has going on in the matchup. It's not even clear to me he wants to have Caryatid and Courser Crufix in this matchup as well, because Joe's shown enough creature removal, and he's unlikely to cut all of it. I mean, he'll probably keep in a couple of Devour Flushes, probably cut some copies of Supreme Verdict, not all of them, but Joshua does get some big upgrades in this matchup, which is good for him because he's pretty far behind game 1.
Yeah, Joe's deck gets a little bit better. He's got 2 copies of Nyx Fleece Ram, 4 copies of Archangel Thune. Not sure he's going to use either of those, but he does have a Duress and additional Thoughtseize, so he gets more discard. 2 Ultimate Price, 2 Negate, a Deicide, a Pithing Needle, and a copy of Blind Obedience. So I expect to see the additional discard come in, those 2 Negates as well. Maybe he boards an Ultimate Price to make sure he's okay against Courser, but then again, maybe not. Deicide is great against these Sphere effects, and he knows that Kendall does have those because he did see both both Detention Sphere and Banishing Light via Thoughtseize, so he knows that those are there in the opponent's deck. And then Needle's not too bad as well, so some pretty good options. He doesn't get a lot of things to bring in, but he's already got such a good game 1 matchup that he doesn't have to change things too much.
Even just getting a 4th copy of Thoughtseize in there is a significant improvement in the matchup. I think the Needle's going to do some good work. Kiora is kind of a threatening card in the matchup. It's not something that you really want to go unchecked, so having a clean answer to that's pretty nice. And Negate is good against the Planeswalkers and Advent, so a lot of upgrades here for Joe.
Especially finish shuffling up here. Game number 2 will be underway in just a moment, but let's talk change, because change is taking place at Star City Games. Beginning, oddly enough, on Monday, new content fires at 11 a.m. instead of midnight, like people are used to.
This is more public service announcement than promotion from us over here. Usually we're talking about stuff that we're trying to hype up a little bit. This is just to inform all of you. The website's going to be updating at a different time. Mainly, this is motivated by when the articles go up at midnight Eastern time, there's really no opportunity to correct errors until the following morning or change content or update things as is relevant. So this way, we can be more responsive to the needs of the articles that go up as they go up rather than having to wait 10 hours.
Unfortunately, we're not perfect. We try to be, but we're not. And when mistakes are made, we don't want you guys to have to wait and have to see them. We want to be able to get everything corrected right away. When we publish things at midnight, everybody sleep on the East Coast. When we Star City Games, they come to the office around 10. and Roanoke.
Because they're not robots. They're human beings that sleep and
they do things like sleeping. So as a result, you guys have to wait a pretty long time for those corrections to take place, and we don't want you guys to have to do that. If a versus video goes up wrong, and that has happened before, we want to get that fixed right away so you can enjoy it when you have the opportunity to. So everything will be updating now at 11 a.m. Eastern. That's 8 a.m. Pacific for me, and that's important for my West Coast people.
Yeah.
And you're a West Coaster yourself, so it's a change. I know change is scary, but we can all get used to it. And WotC has made this change before us. It's been successful for them, so we're kind of following in their footsteps as well.
If you are the type of person who is scared by a change like this, then I'm sure the everyday life is just an unbearable experience.
Yes. We promise everything will be okay.
It'll be fine.
I promise.
I assure you it'll be just fine.
So that, again, begins on Monday. It's crazy to think that August 4th is in 2 days, but it is.
It flies so fast.
It really does. We're going to be at the Invitational in Jersey in a week. That's what it's going to feel like.
Yep, I know.
We're already going to be there. So you add that in, and then we'll be at the Players' Championship before you know it.
Yep.
But what I care about is NBA season's almost here, so.
I can't wait.
Yeah, me either. And that's even like bypassing the fact that football starts in like less than a month, I think. So who knows? Either way, trust us. This change is a good thing. As Joe Lossett and Joshua Kendall are shuffling up here for game number 2. Lossett was able to take things down with some help from the Suns champion in Elspeth.
And only 3 tokens, not uncontested. Just only required the 3.
Lossett number 2 on our Open Series leaderboard right now. Behind him is Billy Moreno. You can't see his face, but that's him.
Texas Billy, as he's known, former Wizard of the Coast employee, was the development lead on M15, worked on a number of sets. No longer works there, but is excited to get back into tournament magic. Doesn't really have the opportunity to do it just yet because, there's a period after you leave the company where you can't work on this, you can't play in tournaments right away.
You have an unfair advantage.
Exactly, but.
Patrick, the nerd is here, is curious on Twitter, since I am a fan of wrestling, and to be fair, so is Patrick.
Yep.
Who would win in a wrestling match between you and I?
You would crush me.
There you go.
You have an actual wrestling background.
That's true. That's true.
I wrestled competitively.
I just wanted to hear you say it, mostly. I know the answer, but I just wanted to hear you say it.
Yep.
It felt good.
In fairness, you have a pretty significant size advantage on me, too.
That's also true. And quicker than I look. So you actually have no shot in all aspects. Apparently, our director has informed us that he has your back with a chair, which I find to be completely unnecessary. I don't think that you need that help. I think it should just be a one-on-one match. No run-ins or any other such nonsense. Also, these aren't, folding steel chairs. These chairs actually will hurt if I'm hit by them.
I'm also pretty sure that a folding steel chair still hurts, even if you're trained to take a shot.
That's probably true. That's probably true. Temples to begin for each player. Enlightenment for Kendall. Deceit for Lossett. We'll see Kendall play a second land here, likely, in a moment. And it is a Plains. He does have a negate in his hand, so deploying that there instead of the Temple of Plenty available to leave up negate in case a Thoughtseize comes firing off.
What's interesting about the matchup now is, both these players are playing Drago a little bit. Joe's deck is a little bit better suited for that sort of game. But Joshua can kind of blow things up at a moment's notice with Mistcutter Hydra. If Joe's unprepared for that card, the game can be looking kind of stalemate, or we're both sort of jockeying in position to suddenly swung into a damage race.
A Temple of Plenty is what Kendall will play. Take a look at the top card here in just a moment. That card's going to stay on top before passing it back to Lossett, who will untap his Hollow Fountain and take a draw. As is oftentimes the case in our control mirrors, it's all about hitting those land drops.
And the Skyr lands are the most important part of that puzzle. They do come with a cost in the aggressive matchups for sure, but in the control mirror matches, I want as many of those as I could possibly get in my deck.
It's a Mutavault, and it's a passing of the turn from Lossett. Advent of the Worm, the draw here for Kendall. That does a nice job of breaking serve. Temple Guard's going to come into play tapped. And you can't cast that because it only has 1 green mana, so Joe is going to say, easy, easy, easy.
Joe spotted that right away.
Yeah. That's why Kendall may have wanted to play that Temple Garden untapped. Not only for the Courser, but he can't cast the Advent of the Worm now either, so.
And it's not like his life total is that significant of a factor in the matchup.
Yeah.
Though Joe just sort of did beat him down game 1.
That's true.
But that's not, I think that's the exception and not the rule.
Lossett with one of those islands in his hand. Known for his white bordered basics.
He loves some revised basics.
There is an island, and it looks like he's going to fire off with the Thoughtseize here.
And seeing Justin Uppel with them too is, you
Well,
can't do that to
surprising.
an impressionable kid. You know, Joe, you have a responsibility not to make these kind of things popular.
Is Justin younger than those lands?
It's close.
Yeah.
It's pretty close.
Yeah. We're going to have a little battle here over this Thoughtseize. Negate is going to get countered by Dissolve. So Lossett gets two. Scry here. And Joe says, don't show me your hand yet because it can influence my Scry.
Yeah. And it looks like Joe has brought in the Archangel.
That's not a surprise to me. Watching Joe play this deck, he brings an Archangel a lot, assuming the opponent's going to board out a lot of their creature removal. And, you know, again, if you play against Joe and you've watched Joe play, he brings an Archangel a lot in these control matchups. So here's the Thoughtseize. Joe's going to take some life. Now, there's a Jace, Architect of Thought, and Elspeth. 2 copies of Courser and an Advent of the Worm.
A little low on power here. The thing is, if Joe's on a Archangel plan, then Elspeth becomes kind of dangerous because of the minus power. But Elspeth's probably the weakest card in Joshua's hand as it's currently constructed. So maybe Joe will get around to the Archangel later and take something of more immediate worth, or does he take the Elspeth here, trying to set up a fast Archangel?
Yeah, it's actually a pretty interesting decision. I kind of like the idea of taking a Jace, even though the opponent doesn't have 2 blue mana. Jace seems like the highest impact card, but he's going to go with Elspeth.
Yeah, I think he's just sensing Joshua is not going to be able to race this Archangel, even if he picks up some stray cards here with his Corsair Crewfix. Maybe he gets a Jason to play. That's just not going to matter enough.
Kendall going to draw a card.
Interesting line. You don't see someone do this very often in the control mirrors, but Joe's hand, I think, is very well situated to take advantage of Joshua's.
Courser going to come into play now that the 2 green mana is available. So now the top card, of course, does need to be revealed. So Joe should be seeing that card since Courser's in play. So Joe should know, okay, that's a Banishing Light.
And now this is really important for Joe to know about because, again, it influences what he wants to do with the Archangel.
Oh, yeah. The plan before was Archangel straight up. I don't know if that's the case anymore. See if Kendall wants to leave that on top or not. And he will, of course, gain a life from the Courser since the Temple of Mystery to come into play. A promo Temple of Mystery. You don't see that one very often.
Do you know where that's a promo from?
That's escaping me. It is escaping me.
Because I don't know. I've never seen that before.
Yeah. Twitter, this is where you jump in. You guys are oh so good at this.
So now Joe kind of has to pivot and figure something else out because he can't just jam the Archangel anymore.
Duh. It's a Clash Pack promo, which is easy to say.
That also is still not helping me.
Duh. Pretty obvious what it's from.
Still not helping.
Oh. Of course, you're going to turn over some cards here. Hollow Fountain on top of the deck now. Kendall going to get the Courser action going. The thing about Courser is that Joe knows all the cards in the grip. So that's a bit of an advantage for him. And this matchup is very much about information.
Yeah, although the line of play that Joe has set up here has gotten a lot harder. Joshua's now making his land drop, so his hand's turned on. Joe can't just play the Archangel into the face of the Banishing Light he now knows about. Joe picked his path there, and I think that if Joshua didn't have Banishing Light in the first couple of cards, it would have been very successful. But now
he's got to work through something else now.
Now it's hard.
You know, for example, he knows that Advent of the Worm is probably coming in a minute. There's a Mutavault for the land. Looks like just going to pass the turn back. There's the Advent. And Joe says, I think Joe's going to cross it off his list. We'll see if he has any interest in counter because it looks like he's got a Supreme Verdict in his hand. So he might be okay with just taking this shot for 7 and then cleaning him up and leaving a Dissolve up. Now there's your Revelation. That'll be Kendall's draw next turn.
And another piece that complicates the puzzle here.
Yeah.
Because Joe just can't be that liberal about tapping out anymore once Joshua has Revelation mana up.
Hollow Fountain going to come into play tapped. Corsair Crewfix going to gain a life. Now here's an attack for 7. So it looks like Lossett's going to take this 7, go down to 9. See if Kendall's going to deploy anything. There's a Jace. This one might be worth countering. We'll see. It's a mighty scary card.
Well, it looks like Joe wants to get that revelation of his own out of his hand. I think with a Mutavault, Joe's supposed to let this go and just revelate. Because he needs to save the dissolve for Josh's revelation. And he has a Mutavault in play to threaten the Jace next turn.
Okay. 3 cards over. And ourselves a Kiora, a Rev, and a Dissolve. And the top card right now is a Primeval Bounty. Hello.
Ooh.
Hello.
Don't see a lot of that.
That's a nice fun of.
Yeah, it is 1 copy in the main deck. Not something you see a lot of.
So Joe's going to figure out how to try to split these here. Now it looks like they're going to have him shuffle maybe. And the reason for that is because when you turn over the 3 cards via Jace, you're not supposed to see the card from a courser right away. And so that's exactly why kind of the players, you see the hands are motioning and the judge is intervening here. So we'll see exactly what does happen as far as the ruling is concerned. Maybe Joe's asking if my opponent has played a land yet this turn. The answer is yes.
Yeah, it is. Reveal the top 3 cards of the deck. So they are the courser has already got the top card revealed, and then the other 2 are revealed as normal. It's a little non-intuitive, but.
So we'll see what the ruling will be here as both players waiting that. And yeah, it will be a shuffle here because that top card should not be revealed. And the reason for this, of course, the shuffle is, yes, the Primeval Bounty, is that really harming things? Actually, it is, because it influences how Joe wants to split this Jace, you know, and how he wants to play.
Oh, it's definitely information.
Yeah, he shouldn't know what that top card is going to be.
So they had to set aside the 1 card on the bottom that was scribed to the bottom. That's the one thing that's currently known about in the deck.
So now Joe will shuffle the deck here. As you mentioned, that 1 card will stay on the bottom because that's the only card that is known. And then we move forward appropriately. So there's that. That goes on top. And now, look at that. We're all fixed. And now Joe can try to split these 3 cards. And it looks like it's going to be Rev versus is pretty good. I mean, this is a tough split anyway.
I don't think you can give Rev Kiora or Rev Dissolve.
Yeah. And Rev is not going to go to the hand, so Kiora and Dissolve will go to the grip. Now we get to see the top card, and that's a negate. Eesh. This is getting pretty hard here.
Yep. That Archangel plan not really working that well for Joe this game. At least thus far.
So here's a Rev. Joe going to draw 3. And actually gaining 3 is pretty important here, going up to 12, because he is under the gun a little bit.
Taking some lumps, and Joshua does have miscutters in his deck now. Whether Joe is aware of that or not, that's a different question, but his life total is more significant than it was game 1, certainly.
So Lossett, after drawing a card for the turn, 4 new cards for him at 12 life. Does have lands to play. You see him bring Caves of Kolios forward. So might be consider playing that one. Has a pretty good idea of what's in Joshua Kendall's hands since Courser's been in play for a couple of turns. And of course, Jace does reveal the cards. So he's working with very, very good information. Looks like he's going to start by playing the Caves.
Now, Joe does have a pretty straightforward turn of Verdict and attack Jace with his Mutavault, but I think now he's taking his opportunity to get his Archangel into play.
And that's exactly what he will do. Well, okay then. And now he fires this up and he says, get your Jace off the table. And that's it. Now, Joe does know about the Banishing Light over there, so this is interesting.
Well, he can take care of the Banishing Light with the Detention Sphere in his hand. This also pushes Joshua to play further into the Supreme Verdict that Joe's setting up.
Miscutter Hydra in the house. That's the top card of the deck. Yeah, it feels like Joe's trying to reel him in a little bit here.
Yeah.
So there's Banishing Light. Here's an attack for 7. Well, that's going to go down to 5. We'll see if his big plan works.
But now with Miscutter on top, that's another dangerous element to all of this.
Let's see if Kendall's comfortable tapping out for Kiora this turn. The answer is no. He wants to leave the counter magic up. Well, that's going to draw. Fairly sure he has a verdict in his hand. As you mentioned, Miscutter complicates things.
Yeah, Joe does have a chump block available with Mutavault, but it's not clear he has anything else really going on. And the Miscutter is lethal.
Yeah. There's a Temple. Looking at a Thoughtseize. Normally great in this matchup. Not sure how good it is now. He's under so much pressure. This is kind of what the Green Splash provides to you in Bant, as opposed to being blue, white, red, or, you know, Esper. You know, the other colors provide different things, but green provides you power to be able to attack people.
Yes.
And put pressure on them.
Better blockers, too. I mean, you just get quality creatures.
Well, so that's going to organize his mana. And now it's time to cast Supreme Verdict to clear these things away, as long as he's happy with his tapping, which it doesn't look like he is. So he's going to change that. Maybe. Well, he's got to make sure.
We got it.
Yeah, he's got to make sure he's got white, white, blue, and he doesn't want to take one from the caves for obvious reasons. So there's a Vert to clear away the Worm token and the Courser. That Miscutter Hydra can be turned face down, of course, because Courser is no longer in play. So, is it just going to be time to cast the Miscutter is the question.
Yeah, because you can imagine if you're in Joshua's seat right now, if Joe has a removal spell, I'm probably going to lose the game if I just tap out and something happens to my Miscutter Hydra.
And he doesn't want to do that. He's going to play Kiora. Now, Lossett is staring to dissolve. And he could have left mana available to cast that. Actually, no, I take it back. No, he could. He would have to take a damage. So here's a Courser. That's going to resolve. Top card is Temple of Plenty. Kendall's going to go to 24 as he hadn't played a land yet this turn. So now it's time to scry. So, this is Revelation. You have to imagine he's going to keep that on top.
Just another haymaker, and that sets the table for the Miscutter Hydra too. Because the Revelation requires some sort of response from Joe, most likely. And he probably doesn't have the mana and resources to answer both of those cards.
Now, we know that Joe has that Detention Sphere in his hand, or at least I'm pretty sure he does. And he can still Detention Sphere the Banishment to get the Archangel back, and the Archangel can provide some problems.
But now there's a Kiora in play.
Yeah.
That, you know, it's just, there's a lot of little things going on right now that are complicating matters for Joe.
Joe looking at a Thoughtseize. Does he want to go from 5 to 3? That's also a real question here. As you see the clock in the middle of the screen. I didn't even realize it, but we're almost about 10 minutes left here. These guys have been duking it out. And neither of them can finish the game fast.
Well, in a game 3 scenario, Joshua, I think, has the possibility because of Miscutter Hydra to win kind of quickly. And Joe does speed up because of the Archangel.
Joe going to take that Miscutter Hydra with a Thoughtseize. So he's at 3. So now he says, all right, perhaps it's time for the D-Sphere. He wants to read this, make sure he knows exactly what it does. So there is a sphere. He says, I want my Archangel back.
Well, this definitely ties up Kiora.
Yep. That thing's busy now. Joe's going to play Holophon on tap and pass the turn back. So we know what card's coming here for Josh Kendall. It's the Sphinx's Revelation. We know he has counter magic in his hand, Dissolve and Negate. That land's going to come into play untapped. So Kendall's going to take 1, go to 23. Let's see what this card is. That's a Breeding Pool. So that'll be Josh's draw, unless he goes down with the Kiora. I didn't think he would. So Kiora, not anything too great happening there.
Joshua's just got so many, his angles of attack are really diversified post-board. He's got a lot of things going on.
Nothing straightforward about it. Makes it tough for Lossett. See if he wants to maybe cast the Rev now. Again, he does have 2 counter spells, Dissolve and Negate in his hand to go along with the Revelation. Those are his 3 cards. He's pretty unsure of himself, and he just says, all right, you go ahead. So Lossett's going to draw a card. It's another copy of Archangel. That's interesting.
It does power past the Kiora.
Yeah. We're getting a Kiora ultimate range soon, though.
Well, Joe can start contesting that. And the other nice thing about Kiora locking down the Archangel is that it is symmetrical. It doesn't deal or take damage, which means this Archangel on D protects him against a Mistcutter as well.
Yeah. Very quick dissolve. And Joe says, I think I want to fight back, so don't resolve your scry just yet. I'd like to cast my dissolve. And Josh says, well, I'd like to negate that. And Joe says, okay. So your dissolve resolves, and now you can scry. Breeding Pool goes to the bottom. Let's see what the top is. It's a a Temple of Enlightenment. Looked like a Hallowed Fountain. That's going to play a Temple Garden tap. Just pass the turn back. So, Kendall's going to untap. Last card has Sphinx's Revelation. Temple of Enlightenment. There's a Mistcutter Hydra. Hello.
Yeah, this allows Joshua to curve very nicely here into pinning down Archangel for 1 more turn, untapping, making an emblem, and casting Mistcutter Hydra.
Which is one heck of a turn.
Oh, he also gets to Revelate at the end of this turn.
Oh, there's that.
There's that too.
There's that too, yeah. That's a thing that can happen and probably will happen. If I'm Josh, I'm gonna rev on my own turn. My opponent's tapped out. I don't want to give Joe the opportunity to peel a counterspell, or if he has a counterspell left in his hand. So he's gonna shut down that.
There is nothing to be gained by waiting.
There's a lot to lose by waiting, though.
Yep. And it's a big rev, too. It's a rev for 6, I believe.
Yeah, he's going to organize the mana now.
So he doesn't even have to discard a hand size.
Yeah.
This seems like a good spot.
He's going to cast a rev just for 3, just a baby rev. So hit 1, 2, and 3. Those are the cards that are going to go to the hand. A Mutavault, a Jace, and a Mistcutter Hydra. Top card is Supreme Verdict. Again, Joe has all the information because of Courser, so as good as Courser is, it's certainly helping Joe out here a little bit as far as knowing what he needs to try to beat. As the land's going to come into play, it's a Mutavault.
Yeah, it's not clear he can beat all this, though.
Not sure if Josh has double blue or not to cast Jace, but he's going to pass the turn back nonetheless. Unless that's going to draw a card.
Joe trying to hold on for dear life here. I mean, if he can take a 1-0 win, I'm sure he'd be thrilled. But going to 2 1-1 this early in the event.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be able to get it done. Going to block one of these. That's going to go down to 3. Well, so that's hand's not great. I think we're a touch late on that Mutavault activation.
Yeah.
Feels like we're a little late. We'll see what the judge's ruling is going to be, and I'm sure that Joe's going to contest this, but
yeah, block was made, and Joshua started to spin down the die on Kiora.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, just a bit late. And that Kiora is going to be down to 3. One second to look at his hand. That's a Watery Grave before passing the turn back.
And that was a long ball shot by Joe there. He has no backup in his hand.
He's on E.
He was doing that just to hope that Joshua would not be able to, would not run a double block there.
Yeah. And even though he didn't, that doesn't mean he's going to win the game. It just means he gets to play more.
Yeah, but good on Joe for giving it the best shot that he could.
There's a land into play. Take 2, gain 1. Of course, that interaction with Courser and the Shocklands. Courser on top of the deck here for Kendall.
Really good stuff from Joe. I don't know if he can. I don't know if he can win this game, but he's given himself a good shot.
It seems very hard. Kendall has so many, really good cards in his hand right now. And he's coming from so many different angles. It seems very, very difficult to win. There's 6 mana. There's Mistcutter Hydra. And Joe's Mutavaults are even down for chump blocking at this point. Yeah, and so he's just going to back it up. Joshua Kendall's going to tie it up between him and Joe Lossett. Band control, Esper control, going to head to a third game. We got about 7 minutes left.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for either one of these players to win, though. They have more ways to win post-board than they do game one.
Yeah, I'm going to watch really quickly here to see if either player is going to sideboard. You see Joshua Kendall going to go through his deck. Joe took a card out very, very quickly. And it looks like Kendall's going to go to his sideboard here, either to confirm or just move something out. There is an Advent of the Worm hiding out in Joshua Kendall's sideboard. Given the time constraints right now, I would want to bring that back in, but we'll see what kind of options he makes here.
And if Joe didn't have Ultimate Price in his deck, I think that he should be bringing it in for game 3. You know, you've seen Advent, Mistcutter Hydra. I want some more just straight-up creature removal.
Well, these players are going to shuffle up here. We're going to get ready to go, but we are going to talk about SCG Game Night very quickly because, oddly enough, it is almost September, and that means that's almost here.
Yeah, you can still register for this if you haven't already, but it's going to debut in September at participating stores. 2 pins and 8 foil tokens per week with new pin and foil designs each month. Every Wednesday night, held at local stores. You can run whatever formats you want, sanctioned, non-sanctioned, booster draft, constructed, whatever the case may be. Just get more foot traffic in your store, more participation in local grassroots organized play. StarCityGames.com/game night for more information. Stores, if you're interested in getting this up and running, you can use all your normal Star City Games organized play tools to get this program up at your store.
Sign-ups for September end on August 11th. So if you do want to have this in your stores for the month of September during its debut, August 11th is the cutoff date. And of course, you guys can run any tournaments you want with this. That's the cool thing.
Yeah, doesn't have to be sanctioned. You know, with the IQs, for example, those are sanctioned events, of course. So can't run two-headed giant or commander or what have you. But whatever you think your store's player base wants, you can even rotate formats. You can put it up to a vote, whatever the case may be. Just have people show up and participate for these pins and these foils.
And there you do see the bushy squirrel from our creature collection. That'll be our first pins and tokens. So definitely check that out, StarCityGames.com/game night, SCGN for Twitter. And of course, game night at StarCityGames.com for any questions you have via email. As game 3, I have a feeling will be a fast and furious affair. I don't know if it's going to finish, but it's going to try to be a fast one.
And game 2 is the issue with the Archangel plan that you saw. It forced Joe to value cards higher than he otherwise would like to. He had to Thoughtseize away an Elspeth out of a hand where Elspeth in the abstract was the worst, least castable card because he was trying to set up the Archangel. So we'll see if Joe's able to steal the game 3 with it this time, or if it kind of haunts him like it did game 2.
There's a Mutavault, and pass the turn back over to Lossett. Again, these players have about 4 minutes to try to finish this game off. Sometimes you'll see Joe have Nightfell Specters in his sideboard when he's playing these blue-white or Esper control decks. He doesn't have them this weekend. That's the kind of card that can steal one, but he doesn't have that card, as I mentioned, this weekend.
And I'm curious to see how much respect Joe is going to give for counterspells out of Joshua's list. He's seen Negate, but not a lot of permission. So Joe may just be willing to fire Archangel Thune into open mana on the other side of the table.
I feel like he's almost got no choice trying to win this thing.
That's the other factor, too. Time is of the essence.
As you mentioned, Josh's deck actually has the ability to close this thing out pretty quickly. It looks like it's going to be a Jace. He's going to take 1 here from Mana Confluence down to 19. Yeah, it will be a Jace. See if Lossett has a counterspell. You can see him pull forward the Dissolve. He's going to cast it, so it's time to scry. Take a look. Looks like it may have been a Negate. And it was. He's going to leave that on top pretty quickly. Lossett's going to play Caves, and now he's going to drop down the Archangel, force Kendall to have an answer for it. We know that he does. He has a Banish Light and Detention Sphere in his hand. There's also 2 copies of Elspeth over there, too.
But forcing this reaction from Joshua may allow Joe to, say, untap, play a land, and play Revelation for 3, untap and cast an Elspeth. It's forcing Josh to react, which takes a lot of the sting out of the counterspells.
And sometimes it turns into a main phase game, because now Kendall only has available as a Mana Confluence. So Joe is just going to pass the turn back with nothing to do. No 6th land. His Revelation, if he does have one, would just be for 2. But he wants to leave counter magic available. Kendall going to play a Hallowed Fountain, going to go down to 17. As I said, he does have 2 copies of Elspeth in his hand. He's going to try to deploy 1. He's going to go to 16 via Mana Confluence to try to do so. Does Lossett have a counterspell? The answer is yes, it's a Negate.
but at least making the effort to try to win the game quickly, which is what both players need to be doing.
There's an island before passing the turn back. Kendall will draw. Courser of Krufix is what he found. Does he want to try to cast Elspeth again, or does he go with a Courser and start to build a little bit of an advantage? Does he have time to do that?
That's the big thing here. Building a little bit of advantage may not get it done.
Mutavault looks like it's ready. It's going to attack. Lossett says, I'll take 2. Down to 18 he goes. And Joe's going to try to resolve a Rev for 3. That's a negate, so that's out of here. Lossett will untap. Draw cards, copy of Hallowed Fountain. We're underneath 2 minutes here.
Is the door now open for Joe to try to Revelate for 4?
Well, he's going to take 2, so it looks like it's going to be an attempt at that. Maybe, maybe not. He's got a Needle. He's got a Devour Flesh, and he's just going to pass the turn. Kendall will draw. Another Dissolve is picked up. This is 3 mana. That's a Courser. Does Lossett care? Looks like the answer is no. Deicide is the top card. That's a Dissolve to take care of that Rev.
And that was a moment where Joe, Joshua was shields down on Joe's turn.
Mm-hmm. Could have just cast it then.
Yep.
But did not take the opportunity to do that. Here's a Temple of Enlightenment.
Just a lot of different things to play around in these matchups.
Yeah. And now Joe's opportunity to try to maybe win this game. That might be out the window. Joe going to play a Devour Flesh to take care of the Courser. Kendall's going to gain a little bit of life here.
I think we're heading towards a draw.
Yeah, I think so too. Decide's the card that's drawn. Of course, top card doesn't need to be revealed because Courser's no longer in play. Gonna fire up a Mutavault here, it looks like. Attack for 2, Lossett's gonna go down to 14. And as long as our time is correct, that's gonna be time for these gentlemen. So that would be turn 0, Lossett would be turn number 1. Again, we'll get confirmation on the turns for everybody at home in just a moment. But yep, it is turn number 1, so everything is kosher.
Yeah, I was wondering, there's possibility for an extension because there was that hiccup with the Jace reveal, but it appears that the clock is accurate.
Elspeth's going to come into play. That's going to tick up. Pass the turn back. Again, Lossett with just a copy of Pith Needle in hand. Turn 2 will be for Joshua Kendall. Looks like Kendall drew an Archangel of Thune for the turn.
Yeah, only 1 copy in the sideboard. Not as dedicated to this plan as Joe is.
Few people are. Joe's been loving this thing. As here's a Elspeth for Kendall. Now, of course, when it comes to Elspeth advantage, Joe's actually the one that's got it. Fortunately for him, he doesn't have the time to leverage it because it's turn 2 of extra turns.
Yeah, turn 3 goes to Joe, then turn 5 goes to Joe. Elspeth will not be ready to be ultimated at that point.
Lossett will draw. Looks like it was just the land. But he is reaching here, so maybe more than that. Well, it's almost certainly more than that now. So Rev? All right, I was way off. So for 5.
It's a big draw.
Yeah.
But again, still not a recipe for winning in time.
3, 4, and 5. 5 life as well. See an Elspeth over there, among other things. Temple of Enlightenment, too. That's going to come in. Take a look at the top cards. Caves of Kolios, that's going to go to the bottom. Elspeth's going to tick up. That's up to 6. That means 6 soldiers will be in play for Lossett before passing the turn back over to Kendall. It's turn number 4 now. Primeval Bounty was the draw there for Joshua.
Fancy.
It is fancy. It's a nice fun of. So there's Archangel. Here come those tokens. Lossett, of course, going to trade. And now that'll tick up, so replacement. We're passing the turn back. Lossett draws. It's turn number 5. And Joe knows he can't win this turn. He will cast a Thoughtseize. We'll see Joshua Kendall's hand of Primeval Bounty Bounty, excuse me, and Elspeth. A bunch of other stuff, but what it's going to be is a draw for these two guys because they're going to need a whole lot more time to finish that match.